All right, I am with our guest this week, a guy seen not too long ago as he won $1.4 million in the 2021 Wynn Millions. A friend of mine, Andrew Moreno. Congrats, man. It hasn't sunk in yet.
Um, it's weird to hear still, but when I hear it, it's like, oh shit, yeah, I did do that. So yeah, it feels good. So anytime anybody wants to say that, I'll take it.
It was quite the tournament. It was a $10,000 buy-in, 1,328 entry field, four starting flights, three starting flights, something like that. And it was 6 days long. This was a marathon. It was 90-minute levels. It was a heck of a tournament. A lot of people saying, could be in contention for like event of the year. What was it like from the winner's perspective as far as the journey from start to finish?
Yeah, I think for anybody that is familiar with long form tournaments, like the main event, for example, the WSOP main event, it's a really good experience to have in an event like this because you get so many chips and then the levels are so long. Really, you just have so much time to be patient or to look for your spots. And yeah, I mean, when I think back on the tournament, you play six roughly 10-hour days, um, and it just was in stages. There's so many different phases of the tournament and very unique because you don't really experience most events around town are 2-day tournaments, maybe some 3-day tournaments, even bracelet events. Most of them are 3 or 4 day tournaments. So yeah, this was definitely tested a lot of the yeah, especially when you throwing in not sleeping great or eating great. I think you can get pretty run down by the end.
It was actually my second experience with you in a tournament this year because I was at the MSPT in San Diego when you final tabled. And at the time, I thought you were playing very well. It seemed like you had taken your game to the next level. And then I've come to find out that, in fact, that you made it a point earlier in this year to really start studying and taking tournament poker very serious. And you had posted on social media just about a week before the win, the Win Millions, that you had two goals. One was to earn over $1 million in lifetime earnings. You were very close, and then you got there when you won a Venetian event for over $100,000. And then the second was to get an elusive seven-figure cash, which you obviously did here in the Win Millions. And it's just incredible because there's not a lot of seven-figure cashes to be had in the poker world in this day and age. Tell us a little bit about, first, I guess there's a lot there. Let's start with your decision to start improving your tournament game and taking your play more serious.
Yeah, so I think something that for me really happened that uh, I would hope doesn't happen to anyone else, and hopefully when they hear me say this, that they may find themselves in a similar place that I did, which is that I found myself deep in the main event. I busted 28th in 2015, I believe, and in something like that, it's kind of like a storybook run. Like you don't get that deep too often. So um, I found myself playing against a lot of world-class players in a deep structured tournament where I was unsure what to do a lot towards the end. I mean, I think in the beginning, I was a bit deeper and the pressure was a lot less, and there were a lot higher mix of weak players to strong players. And then once you get towards the end, it's a like pretty high concentration of people that are either tough or playing really tough. So I found myself really uncomfortable and unsure a lot during that run towards the end. And if you make a mistake for hundreds of thousands, potentially seven figures in equity, it's a hard pill to swallow. So I did that and I felt unprepared. And after I busted that tournament, I thought, I'm never going to get to this stage and be unprepared again. That's the worst feeling in the world, is just getting there and like you're kind of like your one shot and just feeling like you haven't done the work. So it was that kind of mindset that really spurred a lot of self work on my poker game. So yeah, anyone out there, like, if you're playing tournaments and you're doing it for fun and you want to start mixing in bigger tournaments, and obviously the hope is to do well, you know you, that's a really tough thing to get deep and to have all this money at stake and then realize that you kind of don't know what to do. So I would really recommend on the front end doing a little bit of work.
I think you're spot on. You know, as somebody who reports poker tournaments, I always am there at the end, and I see it like you just described it. You see those players who have put in the work, who are prepared for that moment, and then you see the people who haven't really gotten there before and are going to get torn to pieces, barring getting hit by the deck or having luck on their side. There's the clear skill disadvantage, especially in this day and age. So let's talk about then 2021. You make this post on social media that you have these goals. What was your thinking behind that? I know after your win, we chatted briefly, and you kind of said it was more of like a accountability, holding yourself accountable.
Yeah, I think a lot of these goals that I've had in the past, whenever I speak them into existence and I put myself out there and say like, this is what I want, I feel like just that simple act really allows me to hold myself accountable, as I said, but also just have something to move toward, because it's something that I like. Now that I've said it, now I know that like I really need to start playing in tournaments where I can have these seven-figure cashes. And a lot of them are bigger buy-ins and they're tougher. And, that was a scary thing for me in the past. So, all of this was kind of like saying to myself, like, I've done the work, I'm doing the work, and this is a part of my path. And I need to do this for myself. And I want to bring people along with me. So when people follow me on social media, something I did during the tournament was right from day one. I was posting hands and I was posting updates on a lot of my breaks, and I continued that all the way to the very end. So if people were following along, they got to see the entire journey, which I don't think, you know, in big tournaments, it's not too common that you get to watch from, right from the beginning all the way down to someone carrying the trophy 6 days later. So, I want to kind of reward the people that are there for the poker content.
It's interesting you say that about capturing those hands in that journey. I actually went back in the live updates for PokerNews and compiled some of your biggest hands that we had captured, which of course wasn't a lot. We're covering a whole tournament and we catch more as it goes deeper. But anyways, there's going to be an article on PokerNews. Those who are listening, if you want to check it out, it's just basically a recap of your biggest hands. And there's really one that sticks out to me, and it was I think on day 5 you made just what I thought was an incredible call with what ended up being second pair. You rivered second pair. Let me take the listeners through the hand and then get your take on it. So blinds were 40,000, 80,000. It folded to you, and you just limped in the small blind with what turned out to be Queen 10 of hearts. And Anthony Hutzman was in the big blind. He raised to 250,000. You called. The flop comes 7 of spades, 8 of clubs, deuce of spades, goes check, check. The turn is a jack of diamonds, gives you a gut shot. You lead with 390,000. He just calls, and the river comes the 10 of spades. So it puts 3 spades on the board. A 9 would make a straight, but it also pairs you. You check, and he shoves. You are the shorter stack. It's just this high pressure spot. You tank for a couple minutes, and I could see it like that your gut was saying something, but it's still just a hard spot to pull the trigger with just a pair of tens there. But you do, and you end up winning, a large pot. To me, that was just a kind of a defining hand in this tournament. Do you feel the same way? And then what was your thought process in this hand?
Yeah, so I don't know how technical to get. I mean, so I'm just curious. So a lot of the listeners, do you think they prefer like, just a brief kind of overview, or like very technical or?
I mean, I guess I think in this day and age, we've seen it with Negreanu, right? He does like this old school breakdown where it's kind of more simple on the face for recreational players. And then he takes us through the new school approach, which is more technical. And I think a lot of listeners probably would find that beneficial to kind of get both takes, because you are somebody who has went from the former to the latter.
Yeah. So yeah, starting with kind of the brief overview was, um, and these things like when, like, yeah, so like limping the small blind here is like, I basically like, I don't want to raise here with a hand like Queen 10 suited and have my opponent re-raise me and then
Right.
potentially have to fold if he goes all in, or if he goes for a really big raise, I could potentially just have to fold right there. So limp calling is kind of, I think, the play given my stack versus my opponent. And then, on the flop, once it goes check, check, I really felt like my opponent was, people are like, you got to kind of think of like what most people are going to do. Most people aren't going to check back when they just have like 10 high for like 10-9 here, which would be an open ender, right? Or pocket nines or some hand like that. Like most people are going to bet a hand like that, or they're also going to bet if they have a flush draw most of the time, not always. So when it goes check, check, you can kind of eliminate a lot of those hands. So when the turn's a jack, I think with my hand, I only have queen high and I have now a straight draw. I think I can put some pressure on a bunch of hands that my opponent could have that are unpaired, or even potentially small pairs. So I make the bet on the turn for a reasonable size. Then when he calls, I'm planning on following through on the river for a big bet very often, depending on what the river is. And when the river's a 10, it's such an interesting card because like now my hand is kind of a hand that can't really get called by many worse hands, but it also beats a lot of the other hands. So uh, what I expect to happen here is a lot to go check, check and win or lose to a jack a lot, because I think he has a pair of jacks here quite often. And then when he goes all in, now it becomes this situation where it's a big bet. It's an over bet, and or maybe a pot size bet, but it's a big bet. And I'm just sitting there trying to think like, okay, again, the first couple thoughts of like, what kind of straights would he have here? And I couldn't really think of many. And then I was trying to think of like how to, like I could also rule out, I think, a jack. Maybe Jack 10 would do this. Um, and if he was ever slow playing something pre-flop or on the flop, like over pairs, like now he doesn't have those. Because I think his all in is saying I either have a straight or a flush or I'm bluffing.
Right.
So, when we kind of break the hand down that way and we think that it's not unlikely, but we don't think people do that too often, then our hand becomes pretty attractive to want to call with. And, that's like kind of the technical side of it, but also there's this like human aspect of like, I've been playing poker a really long time, and I'm sure like many of you out there, and I know you, Chad, play as well. It's like, how many times have you been into a situation where you're like, okay, this doesn't make any sense. I'm just gonna like I can't see them having a good hand here, and then you just call, and then they just have a good hand that they decided to play differently. I mean, that's something that just happens so frequently, and that's running through my mind is just like, you know, people just have it here a lot too. Like it doesn't really necessarily make sense, but people can just show up with like a flush here.
Hmm.
It's a totally reasonable thing to happen, or you could just have, a not like a jack nine or whatever it is, and just have a straight. So there's this like, there's this kind of back and forth with that. And then ultimately I was like, I decided I needed to make the call, and I thought I had a hand that could call, and I wanted to fold still on the inside because like nobody wants to like put all the money in there and be wrong, because there's like a $20,000 pay jump. There's stacks shorter than me that are very likely to bust. So you got to keep in mind, like if I just fold and wait like 5 minutes, roughly, like it could be anywhere from a minute to like 10, 15, 20 minutes. I'm going to make $25,000. So, that's really like weighing on my mind here of like, do I want to put this in? And I just decided, what, I have to do this for me, because I have to like, I'm going to put the money in. And if I'm wrong, like I needed to do this because I thought this was right. And I'm going to look dumb if I'm wrong, but that's the nature of these things. And I just have to go with my instinct. Because if I think I'm right and then I fold to try to like get those extra pay jumps or whatever it is, then I don't think like, yeah, I won't be okay with that. So then we just dropped it in. Chad was right there, took the hand down and wrote it down. And Christy told me that like you kind of relayed some information to her because there's a lot going on and she couldn't see. So very, very big hand. Yeah. Very
Yeah,
pivotal.
you outlined so many reasons that maybe a fold in that spot is something that a lot of players would do. I think they would. I think a lot of players would err on the side of caution. They're not really sure, so let's just move on to the next one. And that's why I felt this hand was so pivotal, is that you did feel those things, but you still didn't let it override that gut instinct or that logical brain, and you put it in there. And in poker, fortune does favor the bold quite often, or you got to risk it for the biscuit, as they say. And like that was the moment that I thought, like, oh man, he's if he's willing to go with this right here, and he's right, and he was, that he's got a real shot at this thing. And then here you are. And I think that nor players, I guess it's just that's a quality I've seen in champions of poker over the years in my time. Not every champion, but a lot of champions are those who at some point in the tournament had that sort of spot where they just went with their read, or they had to be true to themselves and go with it, and then they get rewarded for it in the end. So poker is a tough game. It's even tougher if you're playing out of a position of fear, if you will. And so yeah, I
Most
don't
people
know.
are.
Yeah, and I've been guilty of it myself, and that's one of the things that has helped improve my game, is getting out of that mindset and that mentality. And then of course I learned a lot. Like I've learned a lot from this Wynn Millions event, just having that front row seat doing the updates, watching the other players, because this was no easy final table that you won. You were going against Toby Lewis and Clayton McGuire. You ultimately got three-handed with them. And you eliminated the gentleman in fourth place, and that gave you kind of the chips to put you in a position to compete with Lewis and Clayton McGuire. You guys ended up working a three-way deal, and as part of that deal, you locked up that seven-figure score that we talked about. That was one of your goals. So, what was it like to in that moment, lock up and meet that goal, but then you're still playing for over $300,000, which you ended up going on to win, and of course the title and the prestige.
Yeah, so it's something that I've never experienced as far as like negotiating for that kind of money, because there's $1.2 million roughly between third place and first place. And we're trying to work that out between the three of us. And there's some back and forth with the win as well on what, how this can look, and as far as like how we're going to do it. And I mean, I'm not a great negotiator in general. So that's kind of like, it's just a high pressure situation where, everyone's a bit tense. The chip leader I had, I think 13 million, Toby had 17, and then the chip leader had 22. And the chip leader, I could tell, felt like he wanted to negotiate for more for him. And so then he starts, basically asking for more money. And at this stage, they're not asking for like, a couple $1,000s. It's,
Right.
you know, big money, like $50,000, $100,000, like, that they want. And, you got to stand, like, for me, I was like, I want to stand firm, and I'm like, no, and then Toby, and then we're all this back and forth. And then there's this like, okay, well then let's play. Now all of a sudden, like the pressure of, the $1.2 million gap is like really felt by everyone, because, I'm almost 50 big blinds and I'm the short stack between the three-handed. So, like my chance to come back and win this thing is not like a far off thing. So I think once we kind of like pushed back and the chip leader kind of had a little bit of time to think about it, we were able to come to an agreement. But it was it was a cool experience too. I mean, it was like something that, the next time I get into a similar situation, I'll feel a lot more comfortable navigating.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people are, like you said, in seven-figure negotiations. I've been around the poker world a minute or two, and I've only been privy to observing them on a few occasions. So that was kind of cool to see you guys work it out. And then you did, and you played it out. You end up winning, and it was a very special moment. A lot of your your friends and family are people who I am very familiar with, and we were at the same wedding last month in Mexico, and so it was just very cool for me. On a professional level, I'm working this tournament. On a personal level, it's a friend of mine taking down this life-changing score, 1.4 million. Christy was there, your wife, Christy Arnett, formerly of PokerNews, hostess, and a good friend of mine who was here when I first started. And to see her there and everybody, and you guys are expecting your first child, it's just it was a pretty amazing moment. And yeah, to talk a little bit about what it was like after the last card came off and that moment of victory happened.
To win this tournament is something that I've been chasing for so long. Just a major title with good players, where there was a lot of chips in play, long levels, and I could really test myself against some of the world's best players. So winning this tournament for me is so special because it kind of validates a lot of the hard work that I've done, and it's a statement to myself that I knew I could do this. I've always known that I could compete at this level. And now when I look at that trophy on my wall, I think about I fucking did that and I should be proud of myself and I know who I am, and that's just a physical representation of that, and it's something that I get to have forever.
Well, cool, man. Congratulations on the win. It was a very special moment for me to be there, and keep it rolling. I think this is, just one big score of hopefully many. You've been around for a while, like you said, and you've certainly arrived. And congratulations to you, to Christy, and a very exciting way to start the new family.
Yeah, man. A lot of diaper money as people have been telling me. So,
All right, man. I'll see you soon.
all right, cheers. Thanks, care. Take care, Chad.